Welcome to Jobs to be Done Untangled, where we talk about all things jobs to be done. There's a misconception that I hear often in the marketplace and when talking to people about jobs to be done, and they're looking for jobs to be done to be a single method. I've had people come up to me and ask about switch interviews, and they think jobs to be done is about it's an interviewing technique, and they were surprised when I told them it was more than an interviewing technique. Of course, you have things out there like ODI, full-blown methods that also give the impression that jobs to be done is a single method. We don't believe that. We actually believe that jobs to be done is a way of seeing. It's a perspective. It's a lens. And there's lots of different techniques out there. And that, to some degree, that's what the Jobs to be Done playbook, the book that I wrote, is all about. It's kind of acknowledging all the great work that folks have done from the jobs to be done perspective. I think core to that perspective is leaving your own biases aside. Don't think about your own product, solution, brand, or offering. Leave that to the side temporarily and focus on what people are trying to get done. And when you do that, you can see opportunities that maybe you would have overlooked otherwise. My name is Jim Caldback. I am the author of the Jobs to be Done playbook and co-founder of the Jobs to be Done toolkit.
And I'm Elaine Matthias. I work with Jim as the other co-founder of the Jobs to be Done toolkit. And I'm just going to go through a couple of rules of the road today for what to expect from our monthly JTBD Untangled. So a couple of quick toolkit updates, then we'll introduce Jake and we'll do our Q&A for the last 30 to 40 minutes of the event. So for the Q&A session, just so you guys know, for anybody that's new to the event, just post your comments in the chat or on the LinkedIn chat, and we will all copy and paste those into the mural board that you see on the screen. And then we'll use that to kind of manage the queue of questions and the conversation. For the people in the Zoom, you're more than welcome. It's a meeting, so you can come up on stage. We love to have you guys interact as well with Jake and Jim and just ask your questions directly. And am I missing anything, Jim? I think that kind of covers.
Sounds good. Yeah, we love your questions. So think about those as we're going along.
Yeah. All right. And just a couple of quick updates. As many of you know, we have the Jobs to be Done Toolkit Essentials course. It's 4 modules of about 4.5 hours of video training. There are a whole slew of tools and templates and resource guides and discussion prompts inside of the course. So it's really meant to be as much of a facilitator's guide as it is like a video learning series. And so you can check that out on our website, jtbdtoolkit.com. And then we also offer a live training workshop about every 6 weeks. Our next one is coming up on September 19th, 21st, and 23rd. It's 2 hours a day over lunch, 3 days a week, and we dive deep into job maps. So you'll learn how to create one for your organization, and we'll talk about some of the ins and outs and how you can put it to use. And lastly, but not least, our next Untangled will be September 27th. So keep an eye on our website, keep an eye out in our emails, and you'll find a link to the Zoom if you would like to join us in the meeting, or alternatively, you can keep an eye on LinkedIn and just drop in more casually if that's easier for you. All right, Jim, do you want to introduce us to Jake?
Yeah, I will, but just a reminder, put your questions into Zoom, into the chat as we go along, or if you're on LinkedIn, put it over there. We're gonna have a discussion afterwards. But I'm really excited about our guest, Jake Mitchell. Hey, Jake, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jim. How you doing?
Yeah, very, very good. Jake and I met, I don't know how long ago was it now? I guess 5 or 6 years ago at the UX Strat conference in Boulder, Colorado, correct?
That's right. Yeah, it was 2018, which feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. And of course, I've been into Jobs to be Done for a while, and Jake gave a presentation on Jobs to be Done, and it was a case study. And I thought this is a really great example of taking Jobs to be Done and embracing the principles of Jobs to be Done without being dogmatic about any one process. And you kind of made it your own. That was one of the impressions that I got. We can talk about that, Jake, and correct me if I'm wrong. But for me, it was the story and the outcomes that you found, the insights that you found that I particularly want to talk about. That was at CarMax. But I also want to talk about what you're doing at DocuSign right now, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you're at DocuSign. What do you do there?
That's right. So right now I'm a product design manager at DocuSign, and I manage a team of fantastic designers, and we're primarily focused on the developer experience and integration space for DocuSign. But DocuSign is largely a technology, really an API first company. So we really help to think through like what are the jobs that developers have.
Great. And prior to that, you were at CarMax, and I think that's where we're going to start with that case study. But what were you doing at CarMax, just to set a little bit of the context?
Totally, yeah. So at CarMax, I was one of the first IC product designers that came into the org back in 2015, and really helped build up the product organization. Myself and like a handful of people were able to start carving out and thinking about this big retailer. How do we start to actually think about having like a full omni-channel experience around that as well? So I was a designer on a product team, and we were largely focused on the digital merchandising experience, which is largely about how do we present CarMax's merchandise, which happens to be used cars. How do we present that online?
Right. So how did you get into jobs to be done? What was the attraction, and what was kind of the trigger for you back then to start exploring the field?
Yeah, so this is something I'll go a little bit more into it. I have a couple of slides about it, but for me, what was really interesting about it is that as a product designer, we were thinking about like how do we merchandise the space? How do we uh, create a better immersive experience online? And so we spent a lot of time listening to our stakeholders and kind of talking high level to customers. And I think like customers would agree with us of like we want a better online experience on like how cars are presented online. And so we took that as like a really literal translation of like, okay, let's improve the photos of the cars that are put up online. Let's improve like the information on there. Let's add more information. And so we're taking this really tactical approach to it, and we were getting some success from that, but the gains felt like really modest. A lot of like the problems that we had were when we dove into the data and looked at what was happening.
Hmm.
You know, we'd see that car shoppers would go onto CarMax.com. They'd spend all this time searching, using search tools, trying to narrow down to a car that they liked, and then they'd go to the store, and very often they wouldn't not end up buying that car that they
Hmm.
found online. Yeah, it was super interesting where like we could track we would do the sample data where we'd look at like this is the car that they submitted a lead for, and this is the car they actually purchased, and they would not be the same thing as well. And so we found that there's some kind of disconnect that's happening between like what people are doing online,
Right.
and then when they get to the store, it's not meeting their expectations. And that's really when in doing research, I came across the whole jobs be done theory. I think I saw like the Clayton Christensen milkshake video on YouTube, and that to me was just such like it was like a light bulb moment in
Mm.
terms of like realizing we're looking at this in the totally wrong frame.
Mhm.
It's like to our customers, they don't really care about like uh, photo resolution or like like how many megapixels the camera has, or they're really caring about will this car like fit the needs of my life? Can I put like a stroller in the trunk and two car seats in the back? And then that was really started where we started going from there.
Right. You know what? I'm going to stop sharing, and I think this might be a good time for you to show a couple of things. And I know you
Yeah,
kind of had your own framework that you were working with to put jobs to be done on top of the work that you were doing there, and that's what we'd love to hear a little bit about.
totally. All right. So yeah, first off, just to give a little bit of like a background too. So if you're not familiar with CarMax as a brand, it's a used car retailer. It's been around for a while now. I think since like 1993. If you remember the old electronic retailer Circuit City, it was actually like a spinoff from Circuit
Hmm.
City. A lot of the executives were saying, okay, we've kind of done this space. Where should we go next? And they realized, hey, what if we kind of take this framework of like retail and having like a good customer experience and bring that to an industry that's not known for those things at all, which is used cars as well. And so they really pioneered a lot of things today that I think we take for granted, like a flat price on the car, being able to have like the actual like history report of the car itself. Um, the consultants themselves that sell you the car aren't motivated to try to sell you the most expensive car. They're motivated to get you the car that best fits your life the best as well. And so they're really radically thought about like how to like create a great customer experience around that as well.
Nice.
And so when I started in 2015, like I said, like this was a company that had been around for a little bit now, and its age was kind of starting to show, and trends were starting to change too as well. So this was what I inherited when I started back in 2015, and sort of the ask was figure out how to make this better. It was pretty open-ended of like what we should think about in terms of it. And what you're seeing here is like there's a lot of what a lot of companies fall into, where you have a website and then somebody comes up with an idea and they put that idea on there, and then they fall into kind of like the feature treadmill trap of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have an option to hold the car online or to schedule a test drive, or maybe we should have like a little slideshow button you can push. So if you don't like to hit the next ones, you can be able to do that instead. And so these little incremental things kept getting added on and on to it. And so it's my job to figure out like, how can we take this to the next level?
And you know, when you frame it that way, and I look at this now, yeah, I can't unsee this, but I'm seeing like a quilt and like all these like stitched to, like you can see all the ideas. It's a quilt of ideas throughout the company that has been stitched together here on the screen. Right?
Exactly. And CarMax as a brand too, I'll say, like, is very has been very data driven and really impressive for a retailer, where there's so much data analytics that go into everything. So I think they saw a lot of success in terms of saying like, hey, we launched this feature and we could see that people are clicking on it, it's driving them out. It was a little bit of tension in terms of like my sort of like designer view of like, do we really need a slideshow button? Is that something that's important? And then the analytics would be like, yes, hundreds of people are clicking on that.
Right.
It's like, okay, I hopefully I won't make the people that like the slideshow button too upset if we get rid of it. But fundamentally, it turned into this question of like, first, let's take a step back and try to understand where, with all these features and everything, what's sort of like the primary things that people are trying to do here as well. And so I would just bring people in, and just do some like high level research. People are shopping for a car, and just give like the prompt of like, hey, show us like how you shop for a car online. Help us find a car that you would feel confident about. And when we do that, the big takeaway, the big insight was that photos are like the primary way that people engage with cars online, and really like make that decision of like, is this a car that's for me? There's, like I said, that car page had a ton of content and a ton of info, but it was really like an 80. It's really like the Pareto principle at play there of like 80% of like what they were focused on was that 20% of photo experience as well. And so we realized that like where we need to go is really like start thinking about improving this photo experience as well. And so that's really like what we began doing for like a year or two, is really just thinking about like how to work on this, how to make photos better. We would realize that as merchandisers, and our job being to like help make sure the merchandise online is really like high quality and something that people want to buy, there's a lot of these like tactical challenges we had to go solve. And so we even had like a Dropbox folder and it was just called embarrassing. And it just was photos we'd find, or that very often our stakeholders would send to us. And it would just be photos that would not put the cars in the best light, to put it mildly. So there might be trash in the car, there might be something inappropriate on the dashboard. In other locations, like up north, it can be really challenging to try to take a good picture of a car when there's 3 feet of snow out front as well. And the last one, sometimes there's gross things on there I don't even want to know. And I'll show my favorite one too is this photo as well. This was an actual photo. See if anybody can tell what's wrong in this picture. You might see that there's like an actual possum photo bombing. So hopefully that possum's okay. I like to say that no possums were hurt in this presentation. So this is largely like what we spent a good amount of time on. I think because we just have this assumption that, hey, like if we improve the photos, if we get rid of the trash in the back of the car and the possums out of the engine bay, surely we'll see some results there, right? And our assumption itself wasn't completely wrong. We spent a lot of this time going from, this is what it looked like in 2015. And then about 2 years later, we did all this work to really like upgrade the photo experience, upgrade the website, or like the car page itself. We really rallied the product managers on the team did a lot of great influencing to get these investments for indoor photo studios. So, you know, the picture quality looks really great. But like I mentioned before, it still wasn't doing the kind of results we really hoped for in terms of that. It seemed that like we were really hoping for like a much bigger ROI, and in terms of engagement, and like what I talked about too, of people feeling confident enough about to find that car online and then go to the store and actually buy it as well. And we were still seeing a lot of you know, diversion from that as well. And so we saw that there's a challenge here of thinking about what this is and like how can we actually like get to like what customers really want here from that. And so this is really when Jobs to Be Done came in and became the tool that really helped so much. Um, and what I started to do as I began to read more and more about this was thinking about, okay, uh, when I'm bringing people in and asking them all these things about like what they're trying to do, fundamentally, I'm trying to figure out like, what is the job to be done here? What job are people hiring the car page and the photos to actually do as well? And so then I started changing my questions, my interviewing to try to focus a little bit more about when people are looking at photos, what are they really trying to determine in the photos? What I was hearing before was like asking them, what do you think of this photo?
Mhm.
And like, you know, I might say like, hey, you know, tell me about this photo. Like, what do you like? Is it a good quality photo? And they'd give like you know, they being user testers, they give like helpful feedback. They'd be like, well, in this one, they probably say like, you know, there's kind of lens flare. It's kind of hard to see. You know, I kind of would like it if it was a little bit brighter. And it'd be like, oh, great, let me take these notes down from there. But that's not really getting to like the actual like purpose on like why people like care about this photo, right? And so this photo, this type of photo of like the dashboard shot, was when we looked at the analytics, we were able to see that this is one of the type of photos that people spend the most time with. And I even saw this in user testing as well, when I'd actually bring people in or remotely watch people or you know, do like remote testing and see what they're doing. And so I started to stop people and say like, you know, can you tell me a little bit more about like why this photo is important, or like what are you really trying to do here? And it got really interesting because then people kept saying the same thing, and they'd say, well, I'm trying to figure out if the car has Bluetooth hands-free calling or not. And the way I can figure that out is I can see the little phone icon on the dashboard as well, and so I can confirm that this car actually has that. I thought, oh, that's really interesting because we have on the car page, we have this content that says, you know, this car has these features, and if it has Bluetooth, it'll be on there. But people say like, even if you know, you say it has it, I've been burned in the past. I want to actually like confirm, I actually want to see it as if I'm actually there to know that it has it. And I said, okay, so that right there was a light bulb moment in saying what the job to be done here is not about good photo or like good photo quality. It's the job to be done here is confirm a car has a feature that I want as well. And so then this turned into thinking of, okay, if that's a job to be done, the way that people are solving it today is they're going to this photo right here and they're like magnifying it. They're going like CSI, like going enhance 3x and trying to like squint their eyes to figure out if it has it or not. As a designer, I can come up with a better solution than that. So what we ended up doing is we actually started tagging the photos themselves. And we went from like just having a list of features to actually showing pictures as well. So you can see the Bluetooth actually has that one. So it's a small shortcut to be able to go in there. And if you go to carmax.com today, they've really even taken this idea even further. Now there's like hotspots on the car and it gets a lot more immersive and everything. But back in 2018, this was like our version 1 of how we approached it. And then when we tested it, we saw there was a lot more engagement. We were seeing a lot more of people actually buying, not only submitting a lead for the car, but actually buying the car that they actually picked out online as well. And it was just a small change like that. So let me also just check chat, see if there's any questions or anything. Cool.
Jay was sharing about his experience buying a car.
Yeah, yeah, right. So much about CarMax, I think, has like this idea of like trying to be that one-stop shop for the whole transaction, where very often you need to trade your car in. You know, you need to get your plates, get registered for it as well. And so they've really done a great job of thinking about the whole, not just the car buying process, but the entire car like conversion, the whole like switch process around that as well. There's a lot of adjacent jobs additional to that. Cool. Well, let me tell just one other part to this too as well. And that's we took this idea a little bit further of starting to look for jobs to be done as well. And so another thing that we heard a lot about when we talked to customers was when they looked at all these photos, especially like the ones of the back seat or like other shots as well, I started to use that same technique of like, what is the job that they're doing when they're looking at these photos? And then that's when I started hearing a lot more about the situations that people are in and why they need to get a car in the first place. Like, why are they essentially hiring CarMax to buy a car, right? And so it started going from hearing about, like like how they wanted to have a nice shot to more about the fact that they really wanted to make sure that the back seat was big enough because they had 2 kids and it seems like they're growing, they're like just about to hit puberty and they're eating a ton and they're growing and they want to get a bigger car for that as well, or that they want to make sure the golf clubs can fit in the trunk as well. So we realized that a lot about what people are trying to do is they're trying to stitch together in their mind what the actual dimensions of the inside of the car are, and like if that actually will like work for their life. And so that turned into this idea of like, what if we gave people the ability to have more of like a 360 experience, just like how you have Google Street View or something else like that. You can actually be able to like pan and zoom around as well. This was something we started thinking about. And at CarMax, as we started talking about it and working with the operations team, we started getting a lot of pushback from these people. The pushback that we got a lot of that was this idea of like the fact that it would be so expensive and so complicated to try to be able to do. And I'd hear a lot of like, oh, yeah, that would be cool. That's an idea we came up with like 5 years ago. But the way we'd have to do that would have to be like a robotic arm, and you'd have to have like 10, high-powered, super expensive cameras that would all take the shots together and then stitch them together. And it would just be like computationally and like operationally way too expensive to do. And so took that feedback, but still wanted to explore and pick up the idea of like, again, like it's not about photo resolution. It's just about like an idea of like, what's the space of the car as well. So myself and the team, we went to nearby CarMax here in Richmond, and we actually started taking some like actual 360 photos ourselves with like a 360 camera we got at Best Buy, and an actual like a tripod, a selfie stick that had a little tripod legs on it as well. And so this was like an example of like what that looked like. It's not the most high resolution like 4K quality there, but it gives a much better sense of the car itself. And so we started doing this, and then actually bringing users in and testing this idea of like, does this serve the job better than what people are currently doing right now, of looking at like 20, 30 photos and then trying to make a judgment if that's actually good enough for them as well. And so let's see if I have a video. Let me see if I can actually share audio. I don't know if I can share audio.
I'm gonna have to go back to the screen share option and then click the audio at the bottom of that screen.
There we go, share sound, okay. All right, y'all give me a thumbs up if you can hear this.
We have some photos, which I think is extremely important. Oh, wow. Whoa. This is really nice. Hey, we have a sunroof. This is better than I imagined. I love this. Can I even zoom? Oh my, look at that. Okay, I am officially in love with this application. I can zoom and rotate around. This gives me a really, really good understanding of the car's interior.
Maybe that's, oh no, it's right here. Oh, this is amazing. This defeats the purpose of having to slide through one image at a time. Like, this is sick. Yeah, This is dope. If you can zoom. Oh, you can zoom in too? Oh, that okay. Awesome. One word, awesome. That's it.
So what I loved about that is what we did is we made a prototype, or I made this prototype of the car page, stuck 360 on there, and then didn't tell the testers anything at all about this, about wanting to go try the feature. Just put it up there and just wanted to test like could car shoppers discover this feature, and would they actually engage with it? Would they find it desirable compared to looking at the photos? And what we heard as we put multiple testers through this exact test, it very clearly came through that like this was something that really like did the job better. Like that second tester basically like said the thing that we were already talking about as well, which is always a great feeling of like this beats having to look at each photo as well. And so this was something that we were able to take back to stakeholders, to the people that control budgets and decide if we could be able to like actually get experiments, get pilots going in the stores, and was showing them and saying, look, here's some proof of how this is doing a better job of solving it as well. And so because of that, we were able to go to a couple of stores, show how the process itself, the initial assumption that they had of this would have to be super complicated and really in depth, and saying actually it's just a really simple 360 photo, just an additional, you need to buy a camera from Best Buy and a selfie stick and some like very light software that we made. We were able to get it out in time that before the big car buyings, the car buying rush that happens towards the end of the year. And we actually saw a real marked increase, not only in car sales, but back to like that conversion of people finding a car online, going to the store and deciding that's the car for them as well. And so to us, that's a real strong signal that it makes people more confident around that as well.
Right.
So yeah, so this is our, that quote is probably one of my favorite quotes as well. So yeah, so that was largely from the work in CarMax. I think I left CarMax a couple of years ago and now work at DocuSign, but I think it's still a brand that has really seen success by working in this jobs to be done kind of methodology as well. And just I see like Jake did like a nice summarization too, but I think the terms of like what I take away from this is it really does start with like trying to understand what the customer's jobs are. Like the jobs are already out there and already exist as well. Like they are these sort of like heavy, eternal things almost that just need to be understood and articulated. And then there's also solutions that they're hiring today as well. And so really you can begin to kind of reverse engineer and say, we understand that's what they've hired today. What are the things we can do to try to improve on that, or to make a better version of what they're doing right now as well? And then if you can do that, I think the experimentation is the important part here too, of not just trying one idea, but trying several ideas as well. Then you can really start to make meaningful progress from it.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Jake. Yeah, I know we have some questions. I'm going to take the screen sharing back because I got something that I want to show and I want you to respond to this. All right. This was something you sent me earlier too. So what's going on here? And, by the way, I just want to say, I love the way that you really applied jobs to be done at its kind of fundamental principle, which is asking yourself, what's the job to be done here? Right. And really doing a reality check and checking your biases at the door and saying, what's the job to be done here? And then moving on from there. So using that jobs to be done as a way to shift things. And I'm assuming that's what this exercise here is. Is that what we're looking at?
It really is. This is something that we kind of just made just as like a way to like help keep ourselves grounded to making sure that whatever we were building was actually going back to like the things we heard from customers on what the job or what the solution needs to be for it. So this is basically like a very lightweight canvas. Up at the very top is a job story. Like if you think like Intercom was the first to really like introduce job stories. But it's and now I think like Strategen also like has a big part of this too as well. But the basic job here is in the context of when I'm shopping for a car, the job itself is definitively know what features it has around that as well. And so we then broke it down into, in that there are these functional requirements to that that we heard, and there's also these emotional parts to it too, as well.
Right.
And so whenever we were doing customer interviews, it wouldn't just be me doing the interview and everybody else just kind of playing on their phone. Like I was asking everybody to like contribute and really listen for like what are functional needs and what are emotional needs as well. And then we'd go back and we'd synthesize and start talking about that. So it's a great way to like help keep the team aligned and thinking and being proactive of when you start thinking about this, using this as a way to say, okay, what are solutions here we can come up with now that we've sort of like primed ourselves to know that we need to have something that, feels really kind of like fun, but also like at the same time, like easy to use, and like has like really like clear next steps and gives like that real sense of trust. That really like helps generate like really great ideas.
Yeah. And then, the visual feature gallery, that in retrospect, it almost seems obvious, but that was something, forward thinking, you use this framework to come up with that thing. And then it was successful. So, that's what I love about his story. Very practical, very simple, but also a lot of success.
Totally. And what's fun about it too is like what it helps us do is be able to like create all the back end things that need to happen in order to like create these like great front end like customer experiences.
Right.
Like before, the associates would basically take a bunch of photos of the car and then like upload them, and it was really hard to be able to say like, how do we know that that picture number 6 is the one that has heated seats in it as well. And so we ended up having to do a lot of understanding of, if this is this front end experience we want to create, what back end capabilities do we need to build, and can we start like road mapping and starting to say. And I think that helps like orient the team to make sure that we're not just coming up with feature ideas that don't really contribute much to like what's important to the customer, but instead make sure that it's really driving through that value as well.
And we talked about that. So if you don't know, folks on the call here, I did an interview with Jake that's out on our Medium website right now. We'll send the link around to that. But I was asking a little bit about what the impact was. And we started talking about alignment and focus as well too. And I know from a lot of my work, particularly in the design trenches, that you'd have these great ideas and you'd go out and talk to people and you knew that that was their reality. But you still have to get that through the project team. And in your case, you had to convince the associates that this is something to invest in as well too. And I've always found that Jobs to Be Done, better than other techniques that I was using at the time, helped give a rationale and to focus on this. People hire photos to confirm features. Let's get that job done for people. And it gives you a logic to align around as well too. And I think you were talking about that function of Jobs to Be Done. Beyond the initial insight, you had this aha moment, but then you got to implement that aha moment, and you need that momentum of the rationale, right? Can you talk just a little bit about that alignment and focus that carried you through?
Totally. What's so great about Jobs to Be Done is that it really does build this shared language where everybody can start to see like what the value is and what everybody's trying to create. And then they can start to see how their role can help achieve that kind of mission as well. So before, like I'll take it down to like at the operational level, we have at CarMax, there are these associates whose job, they don't just take photos all day. Like they have a million other jobs as well that they're expected to do. Just like taking photos before the store opens is just one of them as well. And so part of like what we had to do was like really incentivize and motivate them to like make sure that they really do like invest in like and care about doing this. And, like it's a super, like frankly, I think it's a really hard job. Like they're on their feet all day. It's they're running around. They're they got to do things like they have ideas where they want to go into full time or be like a sales consultant as well, and sort of like this is like their first shot to start that career path. And so really part of this using Jobs really helped to even bring it down to the level of the people taking the pictures of the cars themselves, where to help to connect that and say, what we're trying to do, or when we had our training material come out, we said what we're trying to really do is help car shoppers be more confident and ultimately buy more cars. And we've even done studies that show
Mhm.
that these new improvements or new changes in process lead to a higher conversion, to a higher sales rate. And if you can do these, you're playing a part in that too as
Right.
well. And so
Yeah.
I think there's just something there of like, you're not, there's a big difference between like telling somebody this is the process, and this is
Right.
what you need to do, and this is how you'll be measured by it, versus saying this is the job to be done. This is why it's important. Car shoppers are trying to figure out if this car has what it fits, and
Right.
so this is why it's important for that. And that kind of reasoning really helps people, I think, as well.
That's great. And then you can cascade that down through the project team,
Exactly.
but then in your case, all to the associates, and there's probably thousands and thousands of associates too that you had to convince. Yeah. Hey, thanks for that so much, Jake. I really appreciate the detail there and recounting that story. We got Evan on the call here. Hey, Evan, didn't see you come in.
Evan is in LinkedIn, actually.
LinkedIn.
So,
Well, hey, Evan, nice to see you on LinkedIn then.
just really quick.
Evan was a guest on the show, and he's got a really nice practical story over at Walmart too. So if you want to, we post these on LinkedIn, on YouTube, right, Elaine? That these.
Yes.
So if you go to our YouTube site, you can go watch that one with Evan. And he asked, did you look at the jobs around transportation or just buying a car? You could present cars around the job of transporting kids and activities versus cross country. I think you touched on that, but it's a good question because, you're talking about photos, but then you were talking about, do my kids fit in the car? How were you thinking about that? What level of altitude? It sounds like it was multiple, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something where when we looked at like what customers are trying to do ultimately is, they're not just trying to buy a car, they're trying to, like, a car is an integral part of their life. And
Right.
like it's so much too of like the importance of like hearing that from customers, where especially where the reason they're buying a car as well, and sort of those emotional needs really come into play too as well. Or like for many people, like a car is the thing they depend on for their livelihood, right? It's how they get to work. It's how they make sure their kids can get to school as well. And so for us, it was really important that we try to capture that emotion,
Right.
and make sure that we really recognize and make sure that like that is sort of something that we hear about as well. And then in terms of like, you could really like expand the aperture further and say like, well, how, are there other spaces we can go into in terms of like this idea of like transportation?
Right.
Our team ourselves didn't exactly explore that. There have been teams I know within CarMax where there have been like partnerships. I don't know if CarMax still does this or not, but there have been like partnerships with like rideshare
Right.
companies as well. If you want to buy a car because you also want to do like Uber or Lyft or something as well, there's teams that have been thinking about that. So I think like in terms of like thinking about the aperture, I always like to think about it as like, what is the job, and then what is sort of the competitive or like the differentiated approach, that's sort of like if you're like the strengths of the company themselves that can really like enable
Right.
that job better than anybody else could around that.
And that's when, I get that question a lot, Jake, is like, how do I know the right level? And one of the ways that I answer that is you also have to look at it from your own team or your own organization and answer the question, what can we affect? Right. And if you're a design team inside of a large organization, what can you change or innovate? Well, let's make a feature gallery, right? But if you go up in the organization, it's like, can we partner with car sharing? Yeah, okay. So then if you can affect more, your aperture is going to be bigger, right? But I love the way that you were aware of the bigger space, but you still went like laser focused and you grounded yourself in why do people hire photos to confirm features, right? And you were able to really make a difference inside of that boundary as well too, because you can innovate small as well too. You don't only have to ask why, and go up to innovate, right? And that's what I love about your case study is it's really focused, and there's a center of gravity there at a practical level, right?
Totally. And what I love too is like I touched on this earlier, but what a lot of like these things that we did were like very like experimental and we're just like the version 1 or even like version 0.5 of like what it was. But what it allowed us to do, and like if you go, like I said, go to carmax.com today, a lot of these experiences have really evolved
Right.
and morphed, where you can still see the job to be done there, but the teams there I think have been doing a phenomenal job of taking the momentum that we gained like in 2018 and really started building on it more and getting more buy-in and more investment
Right.
as well.
Right.
So it's still the job's still there, but it's really like bringing even more innovation there as well. And I think that's been a lot better than trying to spend 5 years toiling away at something and then you try to do it all at once.
Right. All right, let's look at the next question. This is also from Evan. The 360 presents the attributes of the car in more detail. It doesn't fully link to the need to find the car to meet someone's jobs in life. Did you ever consider sorting cars based on the jobs people would do? That's an interesting one. Starting,
Yeah.
what car do you have today and why are you firing it? Did you look at things like that? I mean, it sounds like your last comment there about evolving, it sounds like some of these questions probably started to mix into your thinking, right?
It did, and there were other teams at CarMax too. So with my role being on the merchandising team, was really thinking about like that moment of you found a car that you've given some kind of signal that might be the car for you, and then it's sort of like a last decision point of like, are you now going to take the next step and go see that car in person? So there's sort of in that journey, a lot of the sort of like the narrowing down of like what kind of car had been largely determined. But I will say like later on, we even took a step from that and started looking more a little bit higher up in that journey around like helping people even like find a car as well. So the search experience got upgraded a couple of years ago as well. And we try to apply a lot of the same framework that we had from the things we learned about merchandise, like the car page, and start thinking about that on the search page as well. So like, like what are the things there where before we were just showing, one picture of the car and like the mileage and the price on it. And we started to really like add a little bit more to try to give people more confidence, to try to prevent them from finding a car, clicking on it, realizing right off the bat, it's not the car for them, bouncing back and having to do that ping pong. And instead trying to serve up a little bit more relevant job to be done content on the search page.
That's great. All right. We got Sushma. I'm making an assumption here, but I assume the user research uncovered several insights. How did you and the team determine which insights to act on?
And Sushma, if you want to come up and expand on that question, participate in the conversation, please feel free to do so. And Wolfram also mentioned in the chat that one of his questions, which is next in queue, may be kind of similar as well.
Okay. Thanks for your question, Sushma. Did you want to add any detail there or clarify?
I just feel like I've been a part of a lot of use. I mean, I'm coming from the product management lens, and I've, worked with a lot of awesome user researchers, and, we end up having so many insights, and it's really hard to distill which ones we actually want to prioritize first. So I'm curious with, thinking it through the jobs and what you're hiring them to do, does it differ in terms of how you're picking the ones that you actually want to act upon? So just curious how your team actually went through that process.
Yeah, that's a great question of like the prioritization angle and like how do you make sure that like you're focusing on the jobs that like are going to get the most bang for your buck, right? Like that's something where at CarMax our approach was really lean in terms of just being able to say like we're hearing themes consistently over, and so we're just going to try to experiment doing things like desirability testing or demand testing. So have you ever done like I think like Jeff Got Health or Jeff Patton made this really popular, like the notion of you stick a button on a web page, and then if they click on it, it just says, hey, this feature is coming soon. But on the background, you're actually capturing that click or that button push as well. And you have some kind of hypothesis to say, we'll think this is desirable if we get like, X% of users clicking on it as well. And so that can help give a little bit around there. But I would say like more recently, I think there's been a lot of like great tools and frameworks that really help to, when you have a bunch of insights or opportunities, how do you think about prioritizing them? So I really like to think about jobs to be done in addition to Teresa Torres's opportunity solution tree.
Mhm.
I think like they're both two great tools and they really complement each other really well. Jobs to be done, I think, has been really great to like help understand what is the user journey and what are the points in that journey that can really like be expanded and innovated upon. And then Teresa Torres's approach is really diving a little bit further and saying, once you have that, what are the specific opportunities and pain points around that? And then how do you think about solutions for those as well? But she has like a couple of ways of thinking about it. I think the biggest one is trying to think about and try to plot out the basically like what is the frequency of an insight, and
Right.
then like what is the pain level, right? Or
Mhm.
like what's sort of like the desire for that as well. So if you have like uh, an insight where if you could like reframe it as an opportunity, like it's hard, like an opportunity in this case could be like, it's hard for me to figure out the size of the back seat of the car and say, okay, how do we rank that compared to all these other things we've
Mhm.
heard about as well? And so we can do either like surveys uh, or try to find some signals in terms of like indicators we think that might apply to try to understand the volume of how often that's happening, and then also start to understand like what is the pain level or like the satisfaction. So it kind of goes into like the ODI of trying to find like the outcomes that are the most important, but also the highest level of unsatisfaction as well, to try to create some kind of rubric or some kind of prioritization
Mhm.
framework for the team to go and use as guidance.
Yeah, and I think that's the point where jobs to be done moves from qualitative when you're, looking for certain signals, job steps, outcomes, emotions, the map that you had up there. But then you can actually quantify that, and you can find pain by going back out to the market and asking them. You can do that really, really sophisticated and formal, but I've also had, success using that at a kind of a low level with a survey, but small sample sizes and things like that. So you can move quickly. You don't have to be an academic researcher to then
Exactly.
quantify it and to stack rank things, Sushma. Not like Wolfram does. Wolfram has this amazing tool. Of course, Wolfram was a guest on our show as well too. I don't know if you've seen his tool, but he's prioritizing outcomes all the time, and it's quite impressive. So I'm gonna segue over to Wolfram's question here. Do you want to come on and ask your question or reframe it now that you heard that answer, Wolfram?
And while we wait for Wolfram, I just want to note he has a couple of questions there and also a comment. So same with Jay, I just kind of staggered them, and you can see it sort of down in the corner, Jim.
Cool. What's on your mind, Wolfram?
Yeah, so these are pretty short questions. So I just curious if you see a difference when you differentiate the types of jobs or needs you have, so functional, emotional, social, if it makes a difference, because in the end, I assume, or I think the most important one, more highest importance, lowest satisfaction is the one you go for, no matter if it's emotional or functional or whatever.
Mhm.
Just curious what you think about it. And the other question is, maybe I missed it, if you did that workshop internally, like a pragmatic internal approach, or with customers to find out the needs of the two columns.
Totally, yeah. So the way we worked with the workshops was, again, I go back to a lot to like Teresa Torres' sort of framework around discovery, but we built up a practice of doing continuous discovery. So we wouldn't just do one workshop and do the recruiting for it. We did rolling research where we would our goal was to talk to 2 customers every week, usually on Thursday at the same time, just because it helps build this habit and sort of this rhythm, this cadence of knowing on Thursday we're going to talk to customers. And so let's, try to have our work ready for that, or have our questions ready for that. And so largely what this functional, emotional, and social sort of charting was what we were doing is we were doing job to be done style interviewing, and using that as a way to like help synthesize the conversation, just to in the same way that like Bob Moesta Rewired Group has like the forces diagrams. We tried that was helpful too, but as we started thinking about the solutions we wanted to prototype and we're getting feedback on, and we were hearing from that, we were trying to use that as a way to like help us build a better, clearer picture of the solution itself and what it really needs to be able to do to like ultimately have customers like hire that job as well. So.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Interesting.
Great. I'm just going to keep moving over, Elaine. Is that okay?
That's fine. Do you want to go to Jay has a couple of questions and comments, and then Wolfram also had a second question.
Okay. Yeah, let's go to Jay. Maybe you can unmute Jay and just kind of summarize this or ask your multiple questions.
Yeah, we can just stick with the first one because the other one was an observation.
Mhm.
But the thing that I'm really interested in this photos for verification, I'm in a totally different industry. I'm in healthcare. Recently did switch interviews for primary care physicians. And I remember a comment somebody made is they liked it when the websites had pictures because then they felt like the doctor was a real person. And I started thinking about, primary care office. I'm just wondering, are photos for features mostly good for tangible products, or could experiences, and I'm kind of fascinated. I'm wondering like when this would be relevant and not relevant, but so.
It's a good question. I mean, it's something where for me, I was really blown away when I started digging into the analytics of like just how much photos really play a role in shopping. I think especially for like these big ticket items, which is like a used car. And so I think there's the element of like the jobs I talked about of like, does it have the features I need? Is it big enough? There's some other jobs there too of like with it being a used car of like, is there a stain in the back seat? Is there something that, like how can I feel confident that I'm not going to get there and I'm going to see something really, off-putting about this as well. I think there's something about in terms of like the confidence that people want and being able to like tangibly try to see it. I think it's just like this elemental or, just a really like important part to like what people have as well. But yeah, it's something that it's been really, really interesting to see over the years.
And do you have it? I mean, it spans fields and domains, right? Because if you're buying a pair of hiking boots or the stereo, you might have this same insight that people are using photos to confirm features, right?
Exactly.
Have you come across that then elsewhere outside of CarMax? I mean, is that a job in general that people are trying to do when they're shopping?
I mean, I don't know if I've seen anything out in the space I'm in now. So at DocuSign now, we're mainly focused on agreements and thinking about like how to build these experiences that really make people feel comfortable working and working together and coming to an agreement essentially, right? But even in that space, we found like the importance of visuals in that space where how can you start to think about the nature of often like what is a process, like what is like a process to like say like sign an NDA or like have like a new employee join as well. And so like we have all of these steps and this programming that goes into it, but even like visualizing that and helping show what are the steps along the way as well, and like what
Might
are like
not be a photo, but there's a visual there. Maybe
there's some visual representation of it as well, and that really comes into play around it.
All right. Elaine, do we have any more questions? I know we got a couple more minutes here, so we probably could entertain another question.
Nope, everything is on the board right now, but like Jim said, if anybody wants to come on up or share any like final thoughts, here's your chance.
There you go. And Jake, I just wanted to thank you for sharing this story with us. Of course, I heard it, the longer version of it live a number of years ago, and then I included that in the book. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have Jake on the show is because there's a 2-page inside of the Job Suite on Playbook, a little 2-page summary of that Jake was willing to contribute there too. So you can go read that. Again, the thing that struck me at the time, and then when I was writing the book, I was like, I got to get Jake's story there, was just how practical it was, right? Because I think sometimes people think, oh, Jobs to be Done is this big lofty thing, and I can't switch our methodologies out. Like, how am I going to get my team? And you just kind of brought it in as a way to shift the thinking, in a light way. It wasn't a big, heavy framework, just to shift the thinking. I wanted to tell that story in the book, and I wanted to have you on the show to kind of retell that story. So thanks for being here.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's a great way to put it. Of like, doesn't jobs be done? It's about complementing the things you're already doing as well. I know, like, even at DocuSign, there's a lot of questions of like, are you telling me we're going to no longer do personas or these other methodologies? It's like, no, this is just something that will enhance what the things we're already doing and just offer a new way of like helping frame what we want to do. And that's why I love it and keep using it.
Yeah, and it's that frame, I think, that is important. Of course, Elaine and I, out on the Jobs to be Done toolkit, we have a book called Integrating Jobs to be Done. And the question there was, how does Jobs to be Done fit into design thinking? How does it fit into lean? And how does it fit into agile? And the overall answer that we try to characterize in that short ebook is that it provides upfront logic and focus. It kind of helps you think about what you should focus on. But it doesn't replace all of those things. I think it actually gives them a lot more power. For instance, in design thinking, it helps you form your point of view, a much stronger point of view before you sit down and say, how might we, and brainstorm and all those types of things. You have a much narrower point of view that's a lot more focused. Same thing with lean. And I think you just gave that example to Sushma's answer as well, too. That, yeah, you still have to go out and do build, measure, learn, right? Or some kind of Wizard of Oz test or something like that. But your field of possibilities is a lot more constrained, so you can theoretically get through those cycles of build, measure, learn quicker, and you have more confidence going into that as a researcher as well too. So we also present Jobs to be Done as something that's very complementary, and that is another aspect of the story, Jake, that I love so much. So thanks again for telling us.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
All right. Elaine, I think we're going to end it there. I know we're 2 minutes early, but that's probably a good thing. Again, we'll be back. It looks like September 27th, and we'll be announcing that guest. But we'll be back here for another Jobs to be Done Untangled. Thanks everyone for joining.